What is happening, everybody? James Hancock here. Sorry this review is getting posted so late. Earlier I was reviewing the new movie The Shape of Water from Guillermo del Toro, but I just caught episode 11 of season 1 of The Orville, an episode called New Dimensions, and sadly we only have one episode left in what has turned out to be one of the most entertaining shows all fall. I think there are a lot of critics who are grinding their teeth in frustration and ripping their hair out that there's such a massive disconnect between them and the audience. But I think it is safe to say at this point that The Orville definitely is one of the most popular breakout shows of the fall, and I will miss it while it is gone. But what I really enjoy about it is that each episode is basically a standalone story. As much as I love a brilliant season of TV where you've got this giant arc, and that seems to be the model that most TV shows follow these days, but it is a refreshing blast from the past to have an episodic show where basically each episode is a fresh jumping on point where casual fans can dip in and out as they like, and the loyal fans can stick with it from start to finish. But it's not something that has to be taken too seriously. It's not like they're building up this incredibly elaborate sense of continuity. The flip side of that is that with an episodic show like this, you definitely have some episodes that are great, some that are mediocre, and some that are weak. And I would definitely say that New Dimensions was somewhere between good and mediocre, but by no means going to be my favorite episode of the season. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I laughed out loud several times, but The Orville's been on such a hot streak as of late, it was probably unrealistic of me to expect it to sustain that. That said, it was cool to see this episode where both Lamar and Mercer got to prove themselves in interesting ways. It was definitely an episode where each of them had a crisis of confidence in their own way and had to really step up to the plate and solve a complicated problem. Basically, they encounter this spatial anomaly where it's a doorway to two-dimensional space, and it looks really cool inside. It looks like a mix between like a circuit board and like an early 80s arcade game, and they basically have to use it as a place to hide while three krill ships are looking for them, and while they're inside they run the risk of essentially being flattened and killed. And it was a relatively cool premise, but what I liked about this episode is that it had a few standalone comedic moments that really made me howl. At the beginning of the episode, they're throwing a goodbye party to the chief of engineering who's going off to build a space station, and Malloy and Lamar take a piece of Yaphet and put it on the buffet and wait to see if anybody will eat it or how long it'll take for Yaphet to notice. And someone is going to have to help me out with this, because there's this character who's now a recurring character who I'm just going to call the elevator alien, but he looks ridiculous. He's got this giant head, but he's the guy who kept getting caught in the elevator in episode 9, I believe, the one that had Rob Lowe coming back, and he kept talking about elevator music. In any case, he is funny as hell, but he's one of these kind of awkward social lurkers who wants to be in on the gag, likes to be around the funny people, but doesn't quite know how to fit in, especially when Malloy and Lamar are as funny as they are. In any case, Bordas ends up swallowing the piece of Yaphet, and we get this ridiculous scene in Dr. Finn's office where the easiest way to extract the piece of Yaphet from Bordas will be for Yaphet to go in through one of his orifices, and he basically gives him a choice, like, you choose the opening and I'm going in. And what we see is a scene that I'm amazed that it actually ended up on a Fox show, because it basically under different circumstances kind of resembles some really extreme hardcore like tentacle porn you might find. I mean, basically Yaphet deep throats Bordas in order to retrieve the piece of himself, and so in the context of the show it's totally harmless, but take that same imagery and put it on a more forbidden website online and you've got something radically different. So I feel like somehow the show just got away with murder with this really provocative shot. But the main thrust of this episode boils down to two simultaneous storylines. One where they figure out that Jean Lamar has been hiding the fact that he's basically a super genius. Like, he comes from a culture where being super brainy kind of made you an outsider, so he's one of those guys, while he's incredibly intelligent, has just been content to do his job and have a beer at the end of the day and pass out. It's actually kind of what he likes to do with his time. He doesn't really appreciate people trying to push him into a role that he may or may not want. That said, with the chief engineer job suddenly vacant, the question is whether or not Lamar will step up and assume that role, especially when Yaphet, who's very qualified, who's next in line, also wants that gig. But the real drama comes about when Mercer learns that Kelly was the one who vouched with the Admiral in order to get him his current gig, while he's perfectly willing to concede that nobody gets anywhere in life professionally without a lot of help from a lot of people. I mean, in the end, you have to step up and do the job that you may or may not be able to do, and then in the end, you're going to be judged by your own actions. But something about the fact that it's his ex-wife who vouched for him, it's really undermining his sense of self-worth and his confidence. So in the end, it basically falls on the shoulders of both Mercer and Lamar to save the crew because they're stuck in this 2D dimension. They're trying to escape, and they basically volunteer to get into a shuttle and tow the Orville out before this quantum field collapses, rendering them all flat as a pancake. So a very satisfying base hit of an episode. I mean, if this were my first episode watching The Orville, I'd probably be like, oh, well, what's everybody talking about? Like, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it as the gateway drug. But if you're an established fan, then absolutely this episode was perfectly fine. In any case, whatever happens with the season finale, whether it's good, bad, mediocre, doesn't matter. I am totally addicted to The Orville. I want more. Maybe, hopefully, fingers crossed, they might find a way to do like a half season in like the early summer and a half season later in the fall. I doubt that'll happen. I imagine they'll want the full year to get cranked up. What I don't want is a sophomore slump. So however much time it takes them to write and craft and build a quality season of television, that's what I would like for them to take, because now that I enjoy it, now that I'm a fan, I don't want them to let me down. Even if they have to take like a year and a half off to do season 2, I'd be totally fine with that. So fingers crossed, lightning will be able to strike twice in the same place. And while there have been plenty of episodes this season that I feel like are not as strong as the peaks, after long, hard consideration, I definitely prefer The Orville to Star Trek Discovery. Star Trek Discovery has plenty of individual details that I really enjoy, but The Orville just soars for me as a complete show in ways that Star Trek Discovery has so far failed to do so. So my hat's off to Seth MacFarlane for delivering a fresh, new, original concept. It had been a while since I'd really enjoyed anything Seth MacFarlane had created, probably since the first Ted, but I'm totally on board The Orville and will miss it sorely when it is gone. But I hope you enjoyed my review and recap. Please consider giving my channel a subscribe. If you want to talk more, give me a shout on Twitter at Colbrax, or just leave a comment in the comments below. And I hope everyone has an amazing weekend, and I'll be back at y'all in the very near future. So long.